Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking out time and logging in today's webinar. Uh, Today, we have someone who has more than 23 years of experience now and has served in various capacities. We are very happy and honored to have Mrs. Marikutti Valsanninen amongst us, who is going to be the speaker for today. So today the topic that we are going to cover is quality standards applicable to hospital infection control. Uh, Mrs. Marikutti is the DGM Quality Assurance and Clinical Operations in Muthoot Healthcare, Kozhikode. Prior to this, she was the Chief Quality Manager and Chief Nursing Officer in the same hospital. And prior to that, she was the Chief Nursing Officer and Deputy Management Representative in Quality in MIMS Calicut. And then as the Nursing Coordinator in Lilavati Hospital, Mumbai. And all the way back in 1987, she started her career as a staff nurse and a nursing tutor and vice principal in the 10 years that she spent in Hinduja Hospital in Mumbai. So she, by education, she has done her BSc nursing training from the prestigious SNDT Women's University in Mumbai. And then she has done her PGDHA from Institute of Healthcare Administrators from Chennai. She has done her specialization in hospital administration. And over the last 23 years, she has done various programs and undergone several trainings to acquire different types of skills and certificates. Among the important institutes from where she has got certified are IRCA, which is the International Register of Chartered Auditors, prestigious institutes like IIM Kozhikode, from where she underwent a management development program in 2003. She has attended a JCI workshop on quality evaluation of healthcare organizations, methodology, from IHCQF and JCI. She has been a part of NABH program of implementation in MIMS Calicut. She has undergone a certification program for infection control and antibiotic therapy from Quality Council of India and Amrita Institute of Medical Sciences, Kochi in 2011. And so on. And she has of late taken up NABH SSR course, and she is a certified NABH SSR from NABH. So other than all these important credentials that she has in the positions of leadership that she has prevailed over the last 23 years, she also has contributed in as a faculty in various training sessions for nursing and allied healthcare courses, as a faculty for various seminars and workshops in nursing and quality. She has developed several curriculum and syllabus for all these areas. She organized various national, international, and state level workshops and seminars in quality and nursing. She is a member of various organizations, like, for example, the Trained Nursing Association of India and the Irish Association of Critical Care Nurses. And as already said, for hospital and small healthcare accreditation, nursing excellence, and safe. So uh, I think today's topic on quality standards applicable to hospital infection prevention control. I think nobody other than someone with those credentials can do proper justice. So without further ado, let me request our speaker, Marikutti ma'am, to take over from this point.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Guha. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope all of you had your lunch and your brain is active to learn about infection control. Now, first of all, I appreciate Polymedicare for arranging such a workshop, which is the need of the hour. Now, hospital infection control, when you think about, it is the backbone of the hospital, and also of the patient safety. Now, there are a lot of standards which is relevant to the hospital infection control. Now, it is like WHO standards and CDC, that is Center for Disease Control and Prevention. And from India itself, there is a National Accreditation Board for Hospitals and Healthcare Providers. And also NABH has another branch like SAFEI. So there are a lot of these institutes. It has made the protocols or the procedure or guidelines for the hospital infection control. Now, I have a slide share for you when you start with the session. Can you hear, can you see the slide?
Yes, we can, ma'am.
Can you see the slide?
Yes.
Yeah, ma'am. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, okay. So the topic for today, as Dr. Guha has mentioned, is the quality standards applicable to the hospital infection control. Okay, now why? Why do you need the quality standards, and what are the standards, and who have to implement this, and when you need to implement, and where you need to implement? Now, these are some of the aspects when you think about the quality standards. So, as you see in this slide, quality control of any hospital. Now, when you think about the infection control is the backbone of the quality control, and which insist on the patient safety, staff safety, and also the physical facilities of the healthcare institution is also important. Now, what are the various quality standards applicable for the hospital infection control? As I mentioned in the beginning, one is WHO standards, which forms the minimum requirements for infection prevention and control program. And next is the CDC, that is Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and National Health Service, NHS, and NICE, that is the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence, and National Infection Prevention and Control Manual, that is of our India, and NABH SAFEI standards and NABH accreditation standards. Now, these are various standards which is applicable for the hospital infection control. Now, for Indian scenario, thus many hospitals are going for the NABH accreditation, can be of any level of accreditation. The hospital infection control standards implementation is very important. So I am going to talk about the NABH standards which are applicable for the hospital infection control. Now this is a slide which is I have mentioned NABH accreditation and quality. Now I am very proud to say that I am part of Muthoot Hospital, Kodincherry. That is, we are the first NABH accredited hospital in Central Travancore. Now, as you see here, NABH means National Accreditation Board for Hospitals and Healthcare Providers. And aim of NABH standards is the safety of healthcare workers and the patient. So when you talk about NABH standards, now NABH standards as a whole, there are 10 chapters. That is, it is divided into patient-centered standards as well as the organization-centered standards. Now, patient-centered standards are the first 5, and the 5th chapter is the hospital infection control. Now, that is a patient-centered standard chapter. Now we are going directly to the chapter 5, that is the hospital infection control. Now when you see an overview of the HIC standards in NABH, which is the chapter 5, and there are total standards 8 and total objective elements, there's 51 objective elements in this. Now according to the NABH 5th edition standards, these objective elements are divided into 3 levels. That is like a commitment level, achievement level, and the excellence level. Now these are some of the numbers, that is commitment number 34, achievement 3, excellence level 1. So total 51. Now among this, there are core objective elements of 13. So this is again according to the NABH 5th edition standards, that is core objective element. Now during the assessment, I have mentioned a little bit about the scoring based on the implementation. Now you can see here how is the NABH standards or the objective elements are being assessed during the assessment. Now if you see here, starting from the full compliance, the scoring like 1 to 5. So if there is a full compliance 5 score, and then good compliance 4, partial compliance 3, poor compliance 2, and no compliance 5. Now this is the level or how the standards are being assessed. So when you have, now this is the rules for scoring. Now, when an assessment is being done, you need to have an overall compliance rate of 80%, and maximum score, as we mentioned, it is 5. Now, according to the level of objective element, it is being assessed also. So, all the core elements, as we have seen, total 13 core elements, it should have not be less than 4 score. That is very much mandatory during an assessment. And no individual standard should have more than one OE, that is objective element scored as 2 or less. Average score for individual standard must not be less than 4, and average score for individual chapter must not be less than 4, and every objective element with a score of 3 or less should have an action plan with timelines. So this is the new rules for scoring according to the NABH 5th edition standard. Now, all of you who have joined, now I request you just to go through these questions, so that this question is like some of these points we are going to talk about in our session. Now, how many of you know the full form of NABH? Can anybody tell me? Okay, it is National Accreditation Board for Hospital and Healthcare Providers. Now, what is HAI? Hospital Acquired Infection. And there are a lot of short forms which we will be dealing in our class. That is COTI. Dr. Guha, is it possible that they can talk?
This is a webinar format, ma'am. So
Okay. So they cannot talk.
But they can
It's
write.
okay, it's okay. So COTI, that it stands for Catheter Associated Urinary Tract Infection, and CLUBSI, Central Line Associated Bloodstream Infection, and SSI stands for Surgical Site Infection, and VAP, that is Ventilator Associated Pneumonia, and PPE. Now see, these are two terms like PPE and PEP. Like many staff get it confused. Now please remember, PPE is personal protective equipment, and PEP, post exposure prophylaxis, and BBF stands for blood and body fluid, and SSI, I think we have mentioned, and there is another word which is called as BSI, that is bloodstream infection. Now, as we know, hand hygiene is very, very important. Now, there are 5 moments for hand hygiene, which we are going to deal in our session. I hope all of you are with me.
Absolutely, ma'am. I think we are getting a lot of comments in the chat box also. So everyone is following you.
Okay, so we'll continue. Now, see, when you learn about hospital infection control, the chain of infection, understanding chain of infection is very, very important. So if an infection to occur, the first step is that you see here, that's infectious agent. There should be a source of this infectious agent is the source. Then there should be a portal of exit for the organism. Then there should be mode of transmission. So this organism, to reach portal of entry, there should be a mode of transmission. It can be either contact, vehicle, or it can be an airborne, or it can be a vector borne. Then once the organism enters into the body, it is portal of entry. It is like mucous membrane, non-intact skin or GI tract, genitourinary tract, or it can be respiratory tract. Once the organism enters, it is like you need a host for it. It is the susceptible host for the organism to enter and cause the infection. So this is the chain of infection. So once, why you need to understand chain of infection? Because the hand hygiene, the most important aspect of breaking the chain of infection is very important. So if you use hand hygiene, you can break the chain of infection so that you can prevent the infection to occur. So what are the 10 best strategies for infection prevention and control? It is as per Center for Disease Control. The first one is hand hygiene. And second is environmental hygiene. So inside the hospital, we need to see that the whole hospital and the environment is clean. Screening and cohorting patients. Now, in present scenario, especially of the COVID-19 outbreak, so screening and cohorting patient is very, very important. And vaccination for the employees, especially according to NABH standards, all those who are in direct patient care, you need to get need to be vaccinated. And then surveillance of the disease, especially the hospital acquired infection, antibiotic stewardship, and care coordination among the healthcare workers, and following the evidence. So you need to have evidence-based protocol so that you can follow it up. And the last one important point you can see here is appreciating all the departments that support the infection prevention program. Now, when you see the infection control in a hospital is not easy. Now, the infection control nurse, usually in a hospital who take care of the hospital infection control aspects, usually what happens is she is being given, usually you can see that she will be given a nickname, and then, nobody likes she takes rounds in the hospital because they know that she will find out some fault, especially of their protocol implementation. So what we need to see is that if any departments who are very diligent in following the protocol, who support the infection prevention program, you need to appreciate such staff as well as the department so that there will be a teamwork. Now see, a single or a 2 or 3 hospital infection control nurses, they cannot do anything. But it is a team effort, and the support from everyone is very, very important for implementing it. Now let us go into the hospital infection control standards according to the NABH. Now the first standard, if you see here, is the alas. These are the all standards which are relevant to the NABH. So first standard is, you can see here, the comprehensive HIC program. It is very much necessary. You need to have a detailed program of your hospital. And second one is, now to implement the infection control activities, you need to have adequate resources. And third is, you need to have an HIC program protocol, documented protocol, so that how you will be implementing it. And fourth aspect is the housekeeping activities, laundry and linen management, and the food safety. And the fifth standard fully talks about the HAI prevention, that is a hospital acquired infection prevention. And sixth standard is HAI surveillance. And seventh is CSST activities, that is sterilization activities of the hospital. And eighth standard, now this is actually very much, there are a lot of changes in this also in the 5th edition, staff health program and the medical checkup. So these are the main 8 standards. So I don't know how much we will be able to complete. Now let us go into the first standard, that is, you need to have a comprehensive hospital infection control surveillance and the control program. So the first aspect in this is the HIC program is documented. So that means you need to have a detailed documented program, that is, you need to have an HIC manual including all the HIC activities documented in that. And second one is, in this you need to have identify the high risk activities and as written guidance. And third one is you need to have reviewed and updated at least once a year. That is your manual, you need to review it every year, and then you need to see that it is updated. And the fourth point is reviewed based on infection control assessment tool. Now you need to have various tools which is being used. Now especially there should be a validated tool which is mentioned in the 5th edition standard. So you need to have infection control tool used for the surveillance activities. And the fifth one is about the multidisciplinary infection control committee. And the sixth one is infection control team. Now, what is the difference between infection control committee and the infection control team? Now, I have mentioned in the following slides, you can see that who are the infection control committee and the infection control team. And the seventh objective element in this mentions, the team includes infection control officer and the infection control nurse. And the eighth objective element in this is implements information, education and communication program. And the fourth objective element is participates in managing community outbreaks. Now let us see some of these points. Now this is the HICC composition, that is Hospital Infection Control Committee composition. Now in this you can see you need to have the medical superintendent, hospital administrators, microbiologist, and you can have the infection control specialist or a surgeon. That is, see, the members from various specialities should be there in the infection control committee. Then infection control officer, infection control nurse or nurses, it depends on the size of the hospital and the bed numbers. And nursing managers like nursing supervisor, nursing superintendent, nursing officer, etc. And staff from Central Sterile Supply Department, it is very important that they partake or participate in the meeting. And operation theater members like operation theater supervisor or a supervisor or the OT in charge or the OT manager. And you need to have intensive care unit, that is the intensive care unit doctor or the nurses in charge, and also include invitees from various departments as deemed necessary. Now this as deemed necessary is during your infection control meetings, you may see that there is some issues related to some department, or you need now like engineering, you have found that there is some lacunae in the engineering controls, so you may invite the engineering in charge. So the last point, that invitees from various departments as deemed necessary. Now infection control team includes infection control team. Actually they look after the day-to-day activities of the infection control. So mainly in the infection control team you will see infection control officer, infection control nurse, microbiologist and the nurse manager. Now these are the people who are directly involved in the infection control, actually the protocol formation and the implementation aspects. So any issues whichever is coming day to day, it is being dealt by these four people. So when it need to be brought to the attention of medical superintendent or hospital administrators, they will take it to the higher level. So this is the hospital infection control committee and the hospital infection control team. Now what are the high risk area activities? So according to the standard, you need to identify which are the potential risk of transmission of infection. That is, these activities, it is like you expect there is a risk of transmission of infection, or the healthcare provider like aerosol generating procedures. Also, there can be procedure related blood or body fluid spills or specimens and sharps, and also exposure to contaminated medical devices or equipment. So these are the main high risk activities which you need to identify, and this has to be mentioned in your manual. So in this, so we have finished with the first standard, which we have mentioned that second, third and fourth, fifth, 7, 8 we have finished in this. So 8th objective element, you can see here, implements information, education and communication program. Now, it is very important that the Infection Control Committee takes initiative in developing education and communication program. You can have lot of activities in the hospital like Infection Prevention Week, like hand hygiene program, Global Hand Washing Day celebration, so that the staff are participating and then you can educate them also. And the ninth objective element which says is that participate in managing community outbreaks. So we, as the hospital, you need to have participation in the community outbreak. So HIC 2 says that should be adequate resource to be provided for infection control programs. The first point is makes available resources, and second one is earmarks adequate funds from its annual budget. So in the annual budget itself, it should mention that this is the budget for the infection control program, and also there should be an earmarked budget for the quality control program. And third one is availability of personal protective equipment. It is like soap solution, soaps and disinfection. Especially now in this COVID-19 season, we need to see that the personal protective equipment and the hand hygiene resources are being provided. Now, hand hygiene in all patient care areas. Now, according to the NABH standard, you can see that in all areas, hand hygiene facilities should be available. It should be accessible for the healthcare providers. And isolation and barrier nursing facilities. Now, depends on the scope of the hospital and type of isolation, the type of patients who are admitted. You need to see that there is isolation and barrier nursing facilities available in your hospital. So this is about the adequate resources provision for the hospital infection control. Now, something about the PPE, that is the personal protective equipment. It includes, you know, that gloves, protective eyewear, mask, apron, gown, boots or shoe covers, cap or hair cover. Now, if you see the last point, follow PPE guidelines. This is very important. Now, for each and every procedure, you wear all PPE. Depends on the type of case and type of procedure which you are implementing. It's example like if you are going to put an IV line, you need not put your apron, your gown, etc. So if a simple procedure, you need to have your mask and your gloves. So, but if you are going to do a procedure which you expect there is a blood or body splash, so you need to put your rest of your PPE. So please remember to follow PPE guidelines when you use the PPE, that is the personal protective equipment. Now, what are the do's and don'ts of PPE use? So you remember to pay attention to your hands, ignore mask fit, do not, and do be mindful of mask reuse. So in this COVID season, please remember not to reuse your mask other than your N95 mask. Do ensure full covering and do not feel pressure to work without adequate PPE. So whenever you have any procedures to be performed, please see that you have adequate PPE, that is to protect yourself. So we are going to the HIC 3, that is the third standard, that is which deals with the HIC program, which deals with, you can see, standard precautions at all times. It is very important that now standard precaution, what does it mean? We will see in following slide. And hand hygiene guidelines and transmission based precautions, safe injection and infusion practices, establishing and documentation of appropriate antimicrobial usage policy, and implement the antimicrobial usage policy and monitor the rational use and implement an antibiotic stewardship program. Now, this is what is the HIC 3 standards mentions the HIC program. Now, when you talk about the standard precautions, you can see here. Now, use standard precautions for the care of all patients. That is, you consider that each and every patient is infected. So, according to that, you need to see that you are following the standard precautions. Now you can see here in the last line which is mentioned here, remember, think wisely before using PPE. That is, when you before, as I mentioned earlier, please remember that you need to wisely use your PPE before taking care of any of these cases. Now you can see here hand hygiene guidelines, which all of you are aware about the 6 steps of hand washing or hand rub. Now hand hygiene, when we talk about, many staff or many people, they are not clear about using a hand rub and the hand hygiene. Hand hygiene means it is maintaining the hygiene of your hand. Actually, it includes use of hand rub as well as you washing your hand. So when your hand is visibly contaminated with blood or body fluid, or you are going to do any invasive procedures, you must wash your hands. But other occasions you can use a hand rub. Now you can see here what are the main 5 moments of hand hygiene. Before touching a patient. Second one is before clean or an aseptic procedure. And third one is after body fluid exposure risk. And fourth is after touching a patient. And fifth one is after touching patient surroundings. Now these are the main 5 moments for hand hygiene. Now what are the safe injection practices? Now these are some of aspects which all of us need to remember. You need to have a clean workspace and always perform hand hygiene. Sterile and use syringe and needle with reuse prevention and or injury protection feature whenever possible. Sterile vial of medication and diluent, and skin disinfection, very important. Appropriate collection of sharps and appropriate waste management by following simple steps. You take key actions to ensure the risk of unsafe injections are avoided. Now you can see here what is the WHO slogan for the injection safety. One needle, one syringe. It is for only one time. That is for one patient. You remember, one needle, one syringe, and only one time. That is the WHO slogan for the safe injection practices. Now you can see this side, that is you use safe containers for the biomedical waste management, especially your needle and the syringes disposal, so that you can prevent the needle stick injuries. So injection safety guidelines, this is about the Center for Disease Control. You can see here, never administer medications from the same syringe to more than one patient, even if the needle is changed. After a syringe or needle has been used to enter or connect to a patient's IV, it is contaminated and should not be used on another patient or to enter a medication vial. Never enter a vial with a used syringe or needle. Never use medications packaged as single dose vials for more than one patient. And especially in this occasion, you can see like heparin or xylocaine. These vials, sometimes you may use it for multiple patients, but remember the multi-dose vial policy, that is 10 pricks or use within 28 days. This is the multi-vial drug policy. So remember that when you are using a multi-dose vial. And do not use bags or bottles of intravenous solution as a common source of supply for more than one patient. Now, please remember this. Now, see, you may have a 50 ml or 100 ml normal saline which is available, and do not use this bottle for diluting medicines for various patients. So that will be a common source for your infection. And follow proper infection control practices during the preparation and administration of injected medication. And wear a surgical mask when placing a catheter or injecting material into the spinal canal or subdural space. That is especially, please remember this, when you are giving any injection through the spinal canal, remember to wear a surgical mask. That is the intracath injections. And one important aspects in this antimicrobial stewardship. Now, antimicrobial stewardship, you need to have a stewardship team. It is like, you can see here who are the members in this, like infectious disease specialist, infection control nurse, microbiologist, pulmonary doctor or intensivist, nursing personnel, surgical infection experts, OR personnel, clinical pharmacist, and administration. So that means, see, what is the meaning of stewardship team? Now, when you say the word steward, that is the person who is like a watchman. So it is very important that you remember to see that the antibiotics, that is misuse of antibiotics, are being avoided or it is prevented. So always remember, you go from a lower level of antibiotics to the higher level of antibiotics. So this team, you need to analyze the use of antimicrobial, that is antibiotic use in the hospital, and then you analyze it, and then you need to have a stewardship program. You can see here what is an antibiotic stewardship program. You need to see that, like starting from, educating staff is very, very important. Educating staff, supporting an interdisciplinary approach, that is all specialists in the hospital is very important, like pulmonologist, gastroenterologist, general medicine. Everyone need to remember that you need to have an antimicrobial stewardship program, and enhancing infection prevention and control, controlling the source of infection, and prescribing antibiotics when they are truly needed. This is very important, and prescribing appropriate antibiotic with adequate usage, using the shortest duration of antibiotics based on evidence, and reassessing treatment when culture results are available. Now, this is what, when you see here, see, sometimes you have used and escalated, especially a higher end of antibiotic, but when you see that there's a culture report, you need not use such a higher end of antibiotic. So you will come down, that is, you may de-escalate. So sometimes you may use a lower end of antibiotic. So after a culture report, you may need to use a higher end of antibiotic. And the last one is supporting surveillance of antimicrobial, your team and the HAIs, and monitoring of antibiotic consumption in the hospital. Now, this is the antibiotic stewardship program. So the fourth standard talk about the HK activities, that is laundry, linen management, and the food safety. So in this, we do deal with appropriate engineering controls that deals with the designs and implements the plan to reduce the risk, and housekeeping procedures, safe and appropriate handling of biomedical waste, laundry and linen management processes, kitchen sanitation, and food handling issues. Now this, you can see here what is the engineering controls in the hospital. So this is especially about the designing. Now that is spacing between two beds, and also operating rooms. You need to have air quality and water supply. So there is a special standard NABS guidelines for OT air conditioning, and then you need to check plant, that is your air conditioning plant, AC ducts, AHUs, air handling units, cleaning and replacement of filters, and prevention of fungal colonization should be included. That is, these all need to be controlled. That is, you need to have frequent surveillance of this. And last point here, you can see here, water supply sources and system of supply, testing of water quality. Now, these are also included in your engineering controls. And you can see here in this 5th edition standard, now this is a point which is a new objective element, that is a validated tool need to be used for the survey, for the infection control implementation, which is called as ICRA, Infection Control Risk Assessment Tool. Now this is actually any renovation work in the hospital or the patient care areas, it should be planned with the infection control team. Now that means, now you have any renovation work in your surgical ward or your medical ward and any of your department. Before doing the construction work, you need to talk to your infection control team and plan how you can plan it, so that any dust or any infection which can enter to other departments are being prevented, which deals with the ICRA, that is Infection Control Risk Assessment Tool. Now there is a designed tool which is available for CDC as well as the WHO. Housekeeping services in the hospital. So as all of us know, it should be addressed at all levels of the organization. It is not that only in the patient care areas. You need to see this in all departments, and you need to have a risk stratification matrix. That means the whole hospital may be divided into several areas depending on the risk of transmitting microorganisms. It is like your critical care area, operation theater, your support areas. So divide the area so that you will have a better understanding of your infection prevention implementation. And the third one is criteria used to identify these areas. It can include the number of footfalls. That is, how do you, in the risk stratification, how many footfall means how many people come to this area, and what is the type of activity performed, and is there any blood and body fluid exposure in this area. So according to that, you will do a risk stratification matrix. And uniform policy across the different departments within the organization, and common disinfectant use, that is in the hospital, what are the different disinfectants used. You need to have a formulated chart of it, that is these are the disinfectants and dilutions and which area it is being used. And the procedure for terminal cleaning, that is when a patient is being discharged, how do you clean the area, blood and body fluid cleanup, isolation rooms, etc. These also need to be included in the housekeeping services. Now this is just an example of how do you make the cleaning schedule like. So you can see here area and what is the disinfection method, what is the solution used, and how frequently you need to clean. Now, one very important aspect is the biomedical waste management. Now, you can see this point. You are responsible for segregating waste at origin. It is everybody who is creating the waste, and that person is responsible for segregating waste at origin. Because if you mix up the waste, now that is a chance, or it is a source for other people to get the infection, or it can be just like poor housekeeping staff, they may have to segregate the waste. Now this will lead to nudistic injury to them. So please remember, each one of us is responsible for segregating waste at origin. Now, according to the different state protocol, you may have different color code for the waste management. Now, Pollution Control Board of Kerala has designed a separate strategy. These are the different color code for disposing the waste. Now, laundry and linen management, according to the standard, you need to have a laundry setup. That means you need to have different levels in your department, like receiving area, inspection, disinfection area, washing area, and then drying area, and the storage. Remember this. And linen change policy in the hospital, and then types of linen. You need to segregate or divide your linen which is being used in the hospital. It is like clean, dirty, and the soiled, the three types of linen. And safe transportation of linen for dirty and clean. You need to have containers, closed containers for storage and the for transportation. Also, you need to have storage in closed cupboards and distribution. That is when you store the linen. And specific infection control protocols to be followed in your laundry as well as when you distribute the linen. Kitchen sanitation and food hygiene is a very important another aspect which you can see here. You need to maintain safety and the safety of healthcare workers. Training of the canteen staff is very important. You can see here dedicated food storage or refrigeration areas, and the food to be stored off the floor. That means it should be stored above the floor level, and separate the especially the therapeutic diet preparation areas, and measures for prevention of flies and insects, temperature appropriate food service trolleys, and the trolleys need to be closed. Hygienic conditions are followed, and screening of kitchen workers and food handlers. This is very, very important. So there should be a pre-employment checkup and annual health checkup. Also, if a food handler, if he has taken leave for more than 15 days, when he joined back, again his checkup need to be done. And if there is any staff is sick, they should be avoided from duty. And the last point you can see here, there is no crisscross of traffic. That means crisscross means there is to and fro traffic. That is when you buy any raw food, so you need to have an entry on one side, and then from the raw food area you have a cooking area, then after that you have a serving area, so that there is no crisscross of the traffic in your kitchen. So we are going into the 5th standard, HIC 5, that is HAI prevention, hospital acquired infection prevention. Now all of us know that there are mainly 4 hospital acquired infection, that is COTI, catheter associated urinary tract infection, ventilator associated pneumonia, surgical site infection, and catheter linked bloodstream infection. Now, this standard mainly describes about preventing the hospital acquired infection. You can see here 4 main strategies what the standard has mentioned. You need to follow basic principles of infection prevention. And second is standard precautions and transmission based precautions at all levels. Developing care bundle to prevent all hospital acquired infection. And then you need to have insertion bundle and maintenance bundle care for each of these hospital acquired infection. Now, what is a care bundle? Now, you can see here bundle care checklist. Now, each of these to prevent insertion bundle care as well as the maintenance bundle care. Now, just to understand what is the difference between, you can see here, I have just shown you here about the COTI. Now, what are the scientific principles you will follow for inserting a urinary catheter? So that is the insertion bundle. Now, maintenance bundle is once you inserted the urinary catheter, till it is been removed, what are the aspects you will follow so that the hospital acquired infection is prevented for the patient. So that is about the insertion bundle and the maintenance bundle. So these bundle care need to be followed for all the hospital acquired infection. That is for COTI, for the VAP, for SSI, as well as for the CLUB-C. Now the 6th standard talk about the hospital acquired infection surveillance. Now you need to remember that how do you survey now? How do you understand about the COTI in the hospital? So you need to have system for tracking and analyzing. How do you track? You can have your own system, but you need to see that a patient who is admitted with a catheter, whether he developed an infection. So that is how do you track it. And verification of data is done regularly. Now, if you see that a patient now, one of the staff from one of your department, they report to you that this patient urine culture shows some growth, whether this has to be included in your COTI. So you need to have a verification of your data. Then it should be directed towards the identified high-risk areas also, and monitoring the compliance with hand hygiene guidelines, and capture the occurrence of multi-drug resistant organisms, and monitoring the effectiveness of housekeeping services, feedback regarding surveillance data. Whatever the data it is being gathered, this need to be informed to others. And action to control outbreaks of infection. So if you identify that there is some outbreaks of infection, this need to be action to be taken. And whatever the data you have, you need to analyze it and take the preventive action. This is about your 6th standard, that is the HAI surveillance. Now, when you talk about this, you need to see here, there is you regularly do all these things. So we can see here, how do you calculate the HAI rates? Now, first part is about the catheter-associated urinary tract infection. Now, you need to have a document, especially, see, NABH had, initially NABH had a certification program, that is of NABH SAFI. That is, they have a SAFI register. In that, you mention when was the catheter inserted into the patient. So, how many catheter days is been over. So, from whole of the hospital, you need to collect how many patients were on catheter, and in the month you had how many total catheter days, and upon that you have your numerator, how many infections were there, and then you multiply it by 10. This is the rate of clotting. So the same way you have ventilator associated pneumonia, number of ventilator associated pneumonia divided by number of ventilator days into 1000, and surgical site infection, number of SSI divided by number of surgeries, and CLUBC, number of central line associated bloodstream infection in a month divided by number of central line days in that month and into 1000. See, these are not at all easy to gather the data. So you need to have a very good system of documentation and then collecting the data so that you will have a correct data for your analysis. And also you can see here phlebitis, pressure ulcer monitoring, and the needle stick injuries. It depends on your hospital whether you need to analyze this. So whether you, it will be good that you include this in your nursing indicators so that you will have a follow-up of pressure ulcers, needle stick injuries, so that the patient safety as well as the staff safety is maintained. Now, monitoring of hand hygiene. How do you monitor the hand hygiene? You can see here the WHO has given a very good observation form how to monitor the hand hygiene. You can see here I have shown only the one column here. That is, see, you need to stand in your department where the implementation is being taking place. So according to the moments of hand hygiene, you take the auditing. It is like before patient contact, before aseptic procedure, after procedure, or after patient contact, after a surgical procedure. According to this, you stand there and then you monitor it. So then only you can have a real hand hygiene compliance. Now, usually what happens is, they just pick it and then give you a data which says that, okay, you have 90%, 80% compliance, but you need to see an accurate data of your hand hygiene. And the 7th standard talk about your central sterile supply department activities. That is, you have a adequate zoning or sterilization activities, cleaning, packing, disinfection, you have a protocol, regular validation test for sterilization, and established recall procedure is implemented, and then reprocessing of single-use instruments or equipment or devices. So you can see here CSSD zoning. So for a CSSD, you need to have a soiled zone, a clean zone, a sterile zone. These are the main zoning of the Central Sterile Supply Department. Now, how do you validate the test for sterilization? So you have chemical indicators as well as the biological indicators in the sterilization department for validation of test. So chemical indicators, you have different types of indicators like class 1, class 2, class 3, class 4, class 5, and class 6. So we don't have time to discuss about this in detail. So color changes you may observe in the various indicators. Now you can see here there is a recall procedure or callback. Now what is a recall procedure? Now when there is any breakdown in the sterilization system, you call back for the items which are being sterilized and sent to the departments. So that is a recall procedure. And reprocessing of single-use instruments. So if you have any items which is only for a single use, but you are using it again and again, so you need to have certain protocol for this. So if there is any, you need to have list of devices, number of reuses, information to patient, and cleaning protocol. These has to be followed. Now the 8th standard talk about the staff health program and the medical checkup. In this, you need to see that you have occupational health and safety practices, immunization policy, work restriction for your healthcare providers, and then blood and body fluid exposure prevention and post-exposure prophylaxis is provided to all concerned staff members. Now here you can see reduce the risk of exposure to blood and body fluids. Always wear gloves for handling items or surfaces soiled with blood or body fluids. Wear gloves if you have any cut or if you have any on your skin. Change your gloves after each use. Wash your hands immediately after removing your gloves and do not recap a needle. And biomedical waste management. These are very important points which you need to remember for reducing risk of exposure to blood and body fluids. Now remember, do not recap the needle. Now maybe all of us know that for recapping a needle, if at all, if you need, you should follow the scooping method. And blood and body fluid exposure among healthcare workers, please remember puncture wound, skin contact or mucous membrane, you need to follow the protocol for dealing with this. So needle stick injury, if you get a needle stick injury, what will you do? Keep calm and ask for help. That is the first thing. And you can see here, there are 3 steps which you need to follow. Clean it, report it, and treat it. So as soon as you get an injury, you go wash your hands under running water. Do not squeeze your finger. And once you clean your finger, report your infection control team. And then you treat. Now treat is, that is your post-exposure prophylaxis, that you do necessary investigation to see whether you have a known source or an unknown source of your needle stick injury. And according to that, you will follow your post-exposure prophylaxis protocol. Now the one point which I would like to talk to you about this is about the hazardous materials. Now earlier in the 4th edition standards, hazardous material and the spill management was included in the HIC standards. But in the 5th edition, this is included in the FMS, that is the facility management and safety. Now here hazardous materials management, you need to have material safety data sheet for the hazardous material. And FMS 3F talks about the spill management. All the hazardous materials which is used in the hospital, which includes the blood and body fluids also. So you need to have a hazmat kit. Organization has hazmat kit for handling spills of hazardous material. Now spill management, now when you talk about here minor spill and major spill, there can be, like what is a major spill greater than 10 ml? So you need to have some designed protocol procedure for your own hospital. How do you manage the spill? Now you can see here, now most of the hospitals have gone on aneroid thermometer as well as aneroid BP apparatus so that the mercury spill can be avoided. And you need to have a spill kit for managing your spill. That is the especially blood or any chemical spill also. Now bloodborne pathogens, that is again prevention. You need to see that you protect yourself. That is protect yourself, know the rules and know your colors, biomedical waste management, wear appropriate PPE and wash hands, dispose your needles and remember to follow your protocol and keep it clean. Always remember your work site and decontaminate the equipment, follow all safe handling procedures. And the last point you can see here, don't forget, all fluids, body fluids should be handled as if potentially infectious. It is very, very important so that you will protect yourself or you will prevent the bloodborne pathogens. So post-exposure prophylaxis, you know that for HIV you have a prophylactic treatment And for HBV, hepatitis B virus, you have a prophylaxis treatment, but you know that for hepatitis C, there is no post-exposure prophylaxis available. So it is very important that each and every one of us take adequate care so that you will be protected. So we have completed with all the standards. Now I would like to end up in the one very important aspect. Now see, in the hospital infection control, it talks about your attitude and your passion. So in the nurse's prayer, it says that, as I care for my patients today, be there with me, O Lord, I pray. Make my words kind in me so much, and in my hands place your healing touch. Let your love shine through all I do, so those in need may hear and feel you. So you can see here, in your hands place your healing touch. So please remember, when you go to your patient, your hands are clean so that you will not give any infection to your patient. So in the last but not the least, what I would like to say is our attitude and passion matters. So I would like to quote one verse from Bible. It says, truth shall spring out of the earth and righteousness shall look down from heaven. വിശ്വസ്തത ഭൂമിയിൽ നിന്ന് മുളയ്ക്കുന്നു, നീതി സ്വർഗത്തിൽ നിന്ന് നോക്കുന്നു. That is, see, you have a lot of supervisors, your managers, your chief nursing officer, your nursing officer. So usually what I have seen in my experience, daytime you have a lot of protocols which is been followed by everyone, but evening and night duty, what happens, your supervisors may not be there. So what happens is, you may not follow the protocol, but you need to remember that you are faithful and you are sincere, and then you are taking care of your patient and you provide safety to your patient. So your attitude and your passion is very, very important. So I would like to end over here. If you have any questions, you can put it in your question box. Dr. Guha, is there any question or you would like to clarify anything?
I think first of all, I would like to thank you for a very comprehensive session on the NABH standards, primarily focusing on the infection prevention and control standards. I already see a few questions in the Q&A section. One of our colleagues, Mahaling, is asking, most of the hospitals today don't have safety medical device to prevent NSIs for healthcare providers. Is it because health providers don't demand for it, or management are not aware of NSI consequences, or is it a negligence of management? What is it today?
See, I cannot say that such management is not responsible or anything. Okay, it depends on see, implementation of the standards. So the commitment of the management is very much important, and the necessary awareness is also important. So I don't have much.
So the question, I have to rephrase it, ma'am, that NABH says that, use safety devices. I mean, so one is that single use, one patient, one use, one time. So if NABH standards are saying that, and it also says that please use devices which are you cannot use it two times, self-locking type of devices, or they have some safety features. So if those are very clear things, and hospitals already are NABH accredited, which means that there is a commitment from the hospital side to use those technologies. Now, is it the voice of the healthcare professional is not heard, or is there any gap in the understanding of the consequences?
See, NABH, now I have mentioned about the the use reprocessing of equipments. Now NABH has given very specific guidelines for that. If you are using a single use device for multiple time, you need to have a protocol for it. Your institution should have. So you should show that which instrument or which device you are using, and then how many times you are using, and how do you specifically say the efficiency of that instrument. You say that we are using it for 3 times or 4 times, but how do you ensure that this is, it is effective?
Hmm.
So you need to have a list of instruments or your equipment and how many times. And it is very important that you inform your patient when you are using it for a multiple time. You need to have a consent for it.
Okay. So what I get to understand is that there are options provided in the standards that if you wish
Yeah,
to use
it has given very specific standards.
standards. Okay. The second question, thank you, ma'am, for that answer. The second question, again from Mahaling, is how effective is terminal cleaning when compared to fumigation?
Terminal cleaning,
As compared to fumigation, how effective is terminal cleaning?
see, cleaning, effective cleaning with friction, with um, what is it? Effective disinfectant. Effective disinfectant and cleaning with the friction is very, very important. And nowadays, the fumigation is actually out of implementation in different hospitals. And cleaning is the most important. Then even if you fumigate, but you don't clean, you cannot ensure the safety or the cleanliness. So it is very important that you clean the area with, and see, there are different fumigation solutions which is toxic, and some of it can actually really activate the microorganisms, which can cause damage to your equipments, which I have seen in different hospitals. Now, especially when you are using fumigation solutions, it actually damages your equipments, especially the metallic equipments.
Hmm.
So many hospitals, they are not using it, but cleaning should be ensured, and then use surveillance. That is, check for the sterility of the area.
Right. I think Mahaling, that should be, we should be happy with that answer. One of the other questions is what is the ideal temperature range to be maintained in an operating theater? And slightly away from the topic, but if you would like to talk about it.
No, I think, see, ideal temperature, I don't want to make a comment over here because NABH has given very specific guidelines for the operation theater. And it has given specific guideline for a general OT and for the super specialty OT. So it will be good that you refer to the guidelines. Also, like AORN, that is American Operation AORN, also the standards are being given. But it is best to you refer to the NABH standards for the operation theater guidelines.
Another question is, what is the minimum duration that the catheter must be in place to fulfill the diagnostic criteria for CAUTI?
I didn't get you the question.
What is the minimum duration that the catheter should be indwelling to fulfill the CAUTI definition?
I didn't get the question properly.
Basically, the question, ma'am, here is, uh, so it's not the microbiological confirmation. The question is more among the duration. Is there a duration to fulfill the criteria for CAUTI? Is there a duration part of the definition?
I think the NHSN standard, it gives a very appropriate guidelines for the use of, okay, after 2 it is like after 2 calendar days after the insertion, then if the patient develop any symptom.
Right. So 48 hours would be
Yes.
the appropriate answer to, and if the patient develops a urinary tract infection and the catheter is there for over 48 hours, we can call it as a CAUT, and probably microbiologically also confirmed.
Yes, yes.
Elmi Baby is requesting for the speaker to repeat the CSSD standard again once more.
I didn't get you the question.
The CSSD standard you talked about.
Yeah.
She wants you to talk about it a bit more.
And I see I cannot talk to you more about the CSSD because according to the NABH standard, they have told that you need to have a zoning of it. Zoning means you need to have separate areas for receiving your infected items, and you need to have a cleaning area, you need to have a packing area, and then there is a sterilization area. And there is no crisscross of the traffic also. So this is the specific guidelines for the physical structure. And the next is how do you validate your sterilization process? So whether you have sterilized a set, now how do you say that this is sterile? So you need to have sterilization process verification, validate it. So that's why you have different type of indicators.
Right, and especially during COVID times, some dedicated corridors for getting those equipments also.
Yeah.
There's another question, ma'am. Is it mandatory to follow WHO hand hygiene checklist as such, or we can follow a modified one?
You can. There are different type of checklist. This is just what I said is about the WHO hand hygiene monitoring.
Right. So another question is, which chemical can be used for linen disinfection?
Chemical?
For linen disinfection. Linen.
You can have it is about your hospital policy. See, only thing is that the disinfectant, when you use the disinfectant, there will be a very specific mention of it. This disinfectant is being used for preventing what organisms like. So according to that, you can use your own hospital policy.
Another question in the chat box this time is, what all are the tests to do for food handlers? Food handlers.
Food handlers, what are the tests? 1 minute.
Yeah.
Now see, food handlers, you need to do blood routine, stool routine and culture and sensitivity, nail bed culture, and typhoid vaccine. And every 6 months, you need to repeat the stool culture and sensitivity for the Salmonella typhi. And then if any employees, as I have mentioned, if any employees are absent from work for 15 or more than that, you need to repeat the test for the Salmonella, stool culture and sensitivity.
Thank you. I think that answers your query, Shamal. Ansi Joseph is asking what all the vaccinations to be given to housekeeping staff.
I didn't get you the question.
Vaccinations for housekeeping staff.
It is preferably hepatitis B, which is what is actually commonly which we are infected with, hepatitis B.
All right. Nidhi from Polymed team, she's asking, fogging is also obsolete. I mean, we talked about fumigation, and fogging is the same thing as fumigation, I guess. What? She's asking whether fogging is also obsolete.
Fogging.
I think it's the same thing as fumigation.
See, I don't know. Same fogging, and actually it is.
It's the same thing. It's fumigation and fogging is the same.
I think it is the same.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
And to Nidhi, if I have to go back to what Marikuti ma'am has said, is that it is getting obsolete out of practice because of the toxic effects, and also it corrodes some of the instruments. Right? They are very reactive compounds. They're like formaldehyde-based compounds, and hence these can be very corrosive. So cleaning with with a particular agent, and then mechanical cleaning is more important.
Yes.
Um, there is another question. Ansi Joseph again asks, is it necessary to give tetanus toxoid for housekeeping staff nurse? Tetanus toxoid.
Tetanus toxoid for housekeeping staff. Actually, I have a, see, the standard does not mention anything about that.
All right. So, Ansi, I think there's no clear-cut mention of that. But if it requires in your hospital protocol,
No,
then
hospital. Yes, yes. Each
follow
hospital
your
can their
hospital
own.
policy. Um, Another question which has come in the interim is NABH accreditation a one-time phenomena?
No, no, no. NABH accreditation, actually, the validity is of 3 years once you are accredited. But with the 5th edition standards now, it is actually 4 years. But in between that, you will have a surveillance assessment. That is from 1.5 to 2 years, you will have a surveillance assessment, and then you will have a re-accreditation assessment. And you need to see that you see, it is not that you think that it is after 2 years only you will have assessment, but you need to have a monitoring of the quality indicators which is been set by the NABH, and you have to have your mandatory meetings, and every 3 months you need to submit the quality indicators to the NABH office. So it is a continuous process to maintain the quality standards.
I hope that would have given clarity on that question. The last question from the audience side: can we consider long-term catheters as COTY? I don't know what is the question trying to mean. Um, um, I'm not very clear on the question itself, because it says, can we consider long-term catheters as COTY? So I do not know what was the meaning of that question.
It may be if symptoms persist.
If symptoms persist, should we continue with the catheter?
Yeah.
Right. I think those were the questions, ma'am. From my side, I really was wondering two questions primarily. We saw you mentioned about infection, as a part of the HICC committee, the role of the infection control nurse. And you mentioned that there is an infection control officer who also is part of that committee. Now, we also saw that a microbiologist also is there in the constitute of the committee.
Yeah, I said, I mentioned that infection and sorry, the microbiologist is part of an infection control team, as well as he or she will be a member of the infection control committee also.
Committee. So
Yeah.
are they two different people, or more so often the microbiologist is?
No, she can be an infection control officer if you have a good microbiologist. Otherwise, see, there are hospitals which do not have a microbiologist, but they have actually the necessity is a doctor who is interested in infection control and have a good knowledge on hospital infection control, and he or she can be an infection control officer.
Right. Two more. Thank you for bearing with us. One is that you spoke about that the infection control team, I mean the nurse, there are 2 or 3 for a very large hospital. I mean, for every 200 to 50 beds, you would have one infection control nurse, and people give names because they go around and pick up, some, gaps in the practice. So one is that, are there any digital programs, digital tools for them to record all these? You spoke about COTY and how to measure it. You spoke about the phlebitis incidence rates. You spoke about the CLABSI rates and all that thing. So are there any digital ways in which they can collate all this information quickly? Are there any
I
digital?
did not actually clearly understood the question.
So I'm saying, ma'am, that because the infection control nurse has to collect all this data,
Yeah.
it's a huge task. So to make it easy for the infection control nurse, are there some easy tools like which are available on an app or some digital something which they can do quickly?
Yeah. See, different hospitals have different system of gathering the data. And I'm not very sure about some app which is available, but what I have found is that the NIPH when they had the SafeEye certification, they had a SafeEye register. So this SafeEye register which we are using in our hospital, which is a very good document for collecting the data. Only thing is that from the user area, they need to enter the data properly. So every month the infection control nurse can collect the register and then she can gather the data.
My last question. Ma'am, we hear about the linked nurse program, linked nurses
Yeah.
to be helping the infection control nurse.
Yes.
So where do you see, I mean, where are we in terms of maturity on that across different hospitals that you have seen?
Linked nurse program which hospitals have? That's what you asked.
My question was, how many hospitals who are NABH accredited today, they have linked nurses, or is it not mandatory?
I'm not very sure about how many hospitals have it. And there are many good hospitals have it. And they do actually name them differently also. It is like infection control link nurse, or it can be infection control coordinators and department coordinators. So they will help the infection control nurse.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so very much for patiently answering the audience questions and then followed by my questions.
Okay.
Uh, I think today's session has been very, very informative. I think everyone is putting their comments in the chat box that it was a great session. Everyone learned so much in one session itself. And sincere thanks from our side, our team here, Shiju, Srijit, and Ravi is there. So everyone who is there on from behalf of Polymed, the backend teams, the IT teams, etc. We would like to thank you from our behalf, and we would like to thank on behalf of the participants for providing a very informative session today. And we look forward to have you again in the near future on some very important topic, um, which is going to impact the practice in some way. And with that, I would like to offer my thanks to everyone, the audience for taking out time for today's session, and to you once again, Marikutti ma'am, for taking out time for today's session. Thank you. Thank you very much.